come on in, come on in, come on in. Before I start, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Say hi in the comments. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Hi, Instagram. Hi, YouTube. Hi, Facebook. If this is your first time, definitely comment in the comment box. Let me know it's your first time and where you're tuning in from. Good morning, Chef Pascal. Good morning, Faiziat. Good morning, Marine Island born Jamaica in the house. Good morning. Um, okay, let's see. We have here. Hi, Johnny on YouTube and Sonia on Facebook. Let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Aisha Chidole. I'm an immigration lawyer and I represent clients all over the United States with their family immigration matter. We've got offices, in Atlanta and Orlando, but we represent clients all over America, so your location doesn't matter. If you want to consult with us, our phone number is 407-995-6567. You can also send a WhatsApp to 404-333-8751. Today I want to talk about an interesting topic. Okay, I'm just going to type and pin this number real quick before I start. Or WhatsApp. I can talk and type at the same time, so guys, give me 1 second to type this in. 8751. Okay, so my number is pinned on Instagram, and then if you're on Facebook, the number is like scrolling through the ticker. The same thing for those of you on YouTube. I just put some notes together. I just want to talk about some of the things that immigration officers focus on during immigration interviews, and specifically, I'm talking about i.e. marriage-based interviews here in the United States, and some of what in my experience and years of doing this have seen with officers. So the first thing is, they focus on clients' identity and immigration status. So what do we mean by that? So a lot of times, people might, not think that it's important to, i.e., if let's say you and your spouse get married and you move somewhere, you might have a spouse that didn't change their address, or their ID card is showing the old address, or something is expired, or whatever it is. When you're dealing with immigration, it is really important that you update your driver's license. It's important that you update your state ID, because that is one stress factor that you don't need to add to your immigration process. So like, if for instance you lived in like Duluth, Georgia, and then you and your spouse moved to Alpharetta, Georgia, you don't want your driver's license to still say Duluth, whatever it is, because it creates unnecessary doubts and problems where you basically encourage USCIS to go and do further investigation to find out if you live somewhere else. So if you're in the immigration process and you move, it's really critical that you're changing your address as soon as your address actually changes. It's also important that you, the immigrant, you're able to show proof of entry into the United States. So you need to have an I-94 that shows that you entered into the United States legally. So it's not a question of whether you overstayed your time, because as you know, if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you overstay your time, you will be forgiven as long as you entered into the country with inspection, meaning somebody in Customs and Border stamped your passport and created an I-94 for you. Obviously, there are going to be some of you who came years ago. I think it was before like 2016. They used to give the white paper for the I-94. That is something that you can use as proof of entry. But if you've come after that, we can retrieve your I-94 online. So that's easy to retrieve, or your travel history. Some countries might not have the I-94. Some might have, like, we see that typically with like people coming from like Canada. The travel history, the I-94 website allows us to see that. But it's important that is something that was submitted. And if it wasn't submitted, it's something that you have to provide, at the interview. Another thing, and this is very specific to different field offices, is you never submit the original documents when you're mailing, but you always want to bring the original documents or the certified copies of your birth certificate and your marriage certificate. Okay, because those are also things that can cause your petition to be delayed, where they're like, well, where's the original? Again, this is very specific to different officers. We've seen some officers just accept a copy, and some officers will not approve you without it. So, as y'all know, I truly believe it's always better to over prepare and get your approval and be done with it than being under prepared. So let's talk about just interviewing in general. Like, one of the things that USCIS observes in interviews is they look at your body language. And sometimes your body language dictates whether or not they're going to decide, okay, you know what? We decided we're going to separate you guys. We decided we're going to give you guys a Stokes interview. So you want to make sure that you and your partner are in sync, and you guys are not fighting that morning coming there, because you're going to create a harder time for yourselves, doing that. Okay. They also look at how you answer questions. So that is something that's really important that you and your spouse understand, especially for the US citizens who have really never been through the immigration process. So sometimes they may not understand the seriousness of what is happening, but they need to study with you and prepare. Some people are like, well, we're legitimately married, like, so we don't need to prepare. You need to prepare. If I was in immigration process today, like, I've been married for God knows how many years, I would still prepare with my spouse, just because by our very nature as human beings, sometimes we forget critical facts, or sometimes our narration of the story is different. So I can't tell you how many times that somebody has come to us with an NOID, which means a notice of intent to deny, because they're saying, both of you, like, how can you forget matters of the heart? How can you forget how you met this person? Or how can you forget how this person proposed? But it is a true fact that a lot of times spouses have different narrations or interpretations of how they met, or of who dated who first, or how they proposed. So it is really important that in prepping for the interview, that both of you have the exact same story straight. This is not a time for cutesy, or like, oh, that's her version, let me give you my version. They will be putting that in your notice of intent to deny. So you want to make sure you know things like your proposal, when you first started dating, when did you go on your first date, even if you don't know the date. It's really important. It is really important to know periods of when certain things occurred. So when I say periods, I mean, like, if you were married before, you want to know at least the month and the year. Even if you don't know the date, this is not a time to say, I'm bad with dates, okay? You want to know that. If you're divorced and you married somebody else that's filing for you, you want to know when you divorced. Most importantly, you must bring or submit your divorce decree. Again, you're not getting approved without proving that you were divorced. So it is really, really critical, that you bring it. And then in talking about addresses, and where you live, typically USCIS will ask you your current address. Sometimes they will go back to get your 5-year history and just basically see that it's in sync with what you have in your form and what you have in your driver's license. So again, I cannot stress this address thing enough to you guys. Oh my goodness, I cannot. But this is one of the most critical things. Even when USCIS officers go do home visits, this is what prompts them to go do home visits. This is what they write in NOIDs. Well, why are we showing this address? Why are we showing that this car is registered in this address? If you're saying you live in this address, right? Why are we showing that you're receiving mails in this address when it's showing in this address? You guys have to remember, you are dealing with the United States. When I say you're dealing with the United States, there is nothing that they cannot find out. I need you guys to trust and believe this. So you have to really make sure that what you do in an ordinary, that you take it to enough, you understand that it's very different with immigration. Like, they can find anything, because at the end of the day, Customs and Border, Department of Homeland Security, it's really about securing the United States. So they can't just be approving, people that are not eligible to be approved. So it's really, really important that you take this seriously and know that, there's a possibility that they can do a home visit. There's a possibility that they can go to your property manager or your landlord and ask them who's on the lease, who have you seen? I can't tell you how many NOIDs we've seen with that, where they're like, well, I've only seen the wife here before and I see her with a different man, but not this other person. So you guys want to really think about those things. And then, another thing that they focus on is commingling of funds. How do you guys merge your lives together financially? So we see this happen. A question that we see, whether you're together or whether you're in a Stokes interview, is this: what do you guys have a joint bank account? Do you guys have separate bank accounts? Do you have access to each other's bank accounts? What is the bank you use? So it is really important that, and I remember being in an interview where my clients were so nervous that even though they had their joint bank account there, and the officer kept saying, do you guys have a joint bank account? All he kept saying was, well, I have a Bank of America. And I had to sort of say, yeah, he's talking of your joint bank account, because he kept repeating, well, I have mine. And I'm like, well, what about the joint bank accounts that we submitted? And we had submitted like 7 months worth of bank account, but he was so nervous about it. But it's really important that, you tell the truth, even if you have separate bank accounts. It's not something that you're going to be penalized if there are other ways that you can show that you merge your lives financially. Because I know sometimes people are like, oh, my spouse also want to put me on the bank account or whatever it is. There are many ways that you can show that you merge your lives financially, including filing taxes, certain bills, health insurance, leases, credit cards, other than that. But if you are one of those people who feels that you need to have your separate account, in addition to your joint account, that's okay. It's healthy for a married couple to have separate accounts and also have one that's a family account. The key thing is just communicating that to the USCIS officer. We have a joint account that we use for our bills, and that's what we've submitted, but we both have our separate accounts, and my spouse is welcome to access it whenever they want. But that way, we can spend money on things that we might want to do. Or if I want to buy him or her a gift and I don't necessarily want him to know that I bought him a gift. So that's an example, of when you might have, separate bank accounts in addition to your joint bank accounts. So those are some of the critical things. I mean, this topic is a very long topic, and it will probably take me like hours to go through different things that we see. But to me, these are some of the core and the most critical things that they would ask you in your first interview, whether you're in a Stokes or whether you're a Stokes interview. For those who don't know, is like when they separate the two of you guys, or whether you're together. So these are things that are critical. Obviously, in a Stokes interview, it goes into deeper details down to, when last did you guys have sex? Personally, I think that's an inappropriate question for officers to ask. But sometimes they do ask that. Sometimes they ask you, what boxer was your spouse wearing? Where did you sleep? Today, sometimes you have officers give you a piece of paper, and they say, draw your bedroom. Draw your bedroom. Where's your bed? Where's your pillow? Where are the windows? Where's the dresser? Bring the other spouse and you draw your bedroom. What color your sheets, So all these things are things, those are things that they focus on in, like, when they get into those minute details, are things that they focus on in a Stokes interview. And I can probably do a live on Stokes interview in particular, to talk about some of the questions that, we've seen. But the majority of what I'm talking about right now is your typical everyday interview. It's really important that, these they may seem basic, but you want to know those things. Okay, let's see what questions we have. Oh my goodness, I only have 3 minutes. All right, let's see what we have, if we have any questions. Good morning, Fanny Boy. Ashani says your address comment is really important for VAWA too, guys. Yes, you guys, addresses are so important. I just don't understand, like, when people, it's like for those of us who've taken the bar, I'm sure I see some lawyers on here who can even attest to it. Like even us, when we are being sworn in to become, attorneys, we have to have our address history from since the time we were 16. And I remember, because when I graduated law school in 2005, this is making me date myself. Obviously I took the bar then, passed it, and it was easier because I was younger then. But then 10 years later, I took the Florida bar, right? Yeah, I took the Florida bar 10 years later. So at that point, so many years had passed since I was 16. And I remember it was really, really difficult, me getting all those addresses together. But I had to get those addresses together in order for me to get sworn in, into Florida. So it's one of those things that if you're in the immigration process, I'm telling you now, just try to go write those things down. Write them down, so you know your addresses, and try to memorize them, and try to memorize the period in which you lived in those addresses, because addresses, like even when I do reviews, if an address doesn't add up, if you're saying you live with your spouse here and I'm like, well, why is the bill showing there? Like, I even go down to the details of like, if I'm looking at somebody's bank account statement, a lot of people just say, okay, here's a copy of our joint bank accounts. I go down to the granular detail and I study locations of every single transaction. Why do I do that? Because I know USCIS officers are going to do that. If you're saying that you live in Fort Lauderdale, why are all these transactions shown in Atlanta, Georgia? So it is really important that you're really looking at what you submit. This is not a time to just say, okay, here you go. You want pictures? Here you go. You want bank account? Here you go. You want address? Here you go. It's really a time to really use a fine tune. If you've never been thorough in anything else in your life, when it comes to immigration, you want to make sure that you're thorough. You want to make sure, if you ask yourself, like, this is how I tell my clients, if I have to ask for clarification, and I cannot and your clarification is not satisfactory, where I can put that clarification in the application, it doesn't. We don't want it. We don't want it because it's causing confusion. So that is how you have to think about, what you submit and how you prepare for the interview process. Okay. So somebody says, how long does it take after submitting your application to receive your Social Security card and work permit? The answer really varies. It depends on what kind of application you're submitting. But since we're talking about marriage, with marriage cases, it could be anywhere from like 5 to 8 months. Most people get it around month 5.5, 6.5, but you still have that window where you really can't do any inquiry until after that window is out. So that's how long it takes. Usually you get your work permit first, and then your Social Security can come a couple of weeks later. Sometimes it will come like a few days later, but generally a couple of weeks later is not a cause for concern. Okay, so last question. Actually, let me see what time I got to go. I might have a few minutes, guys. Just hold on. Let me check my calendar. Yeah, I do have to go. So this is the last question I'm going to take. If you're in a B1, B2, is a bank account necessary? What do you mean? Do you mean like if you're married to somebody? If you're married to somebody, there's no evidence that is necessary, but all evidence is necessary. Does that make sense to you guys? Meaning everything that you can get it. Meaning they're not going to say, okay, because you don't have this one thing, we're going to deny you. But when USCIS officers are making decisions in your immigration cases, they make a decision based on a totality of all the evidence that has been submitted. Okay, so the more you submit that's credible, the better for you. So do you have to get a bank account? No, nobody's putting a gun to your head to get a bank account. Nobody's saying if you don't have a bank account you're going to get denied. But can you get a bank account? If the answer is yes, you better get it. Okay. All right, guys. This was fun. I gotta jump off. I have a meeting. Thank you guys for tuning in live. I'll be back on live sometime later this week. If you want to schedule a call me 407-995-6567. You can also text us on WhatsApp to schedule a consult, 404-333-8751. Again, my number is in the profile for my Instagram, profile for my Facebook, as well as profile for YouTube. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye.